Europe finally nears a China deal on tariffs. Waymo gets competition as robotaxi hits the road. Xpeng has big plans for UK and Europe. We check out viewer comments and update our Fancy EV virtual stock portfolio. I'm Dave, this is Dave Takes It On. And if you do like this channel, please subscribe and consider supporting us through memberships. They've got lots to offer. Details down below. Will tariffs ever become just history and let the world get back to normal? The EU seems to be trying their best. Could be a response to Trump with a, well, he's really upset us, so anything he does we'll do the opposite attitude, and that might be a sensible strategy. But there's also a realisation that we can't make or grow absolutely everything in-house. We can't grow bananas in Europe. Not in the European climate. We can't mine rare earth metals if there are none in the earth in, say, Italy. And this has never been an issue in the past. We simply started working with others who can supply us with what we can't. We set up supply links and chains of bananas with those that can and do grow them and expected nothing in return other than bananas. They grew bananas. We can't, so why demand anything more? It didn't lose any European jobs because we had nobody growing bananas in the first place. But where jobs were at risk, say in the motor industry, they could just enter into partnerships. The Japanese were one of the largest partners over half a century ago, but the principle dates back to before the British Empire. In fact, Cornish miners exported tin to ancient Egypt. They didn't come over here and build pyramids for us. Well, today those partnerships are much less imperialistic and much more collaborative. Simply, there must be something in it for both partners. Hence, Japan now has factories in Europe, Europe has factories in America, America has factories in Mexico, and so on and so on and so on. But while both partners get something out of it, there is no possibility of every partnership getting exactly the same in either value or number of jobs. So back to bananas. We eat bananas, so we need to buy them from somewhere. And it matters not where from, well, subject to avoiding really horrendous regimes, if at all possible. And often that country might be quite poor relative to the buyer and simply does not have the money or demand to be able to buy the same value of something else from the buyer. Does that mean we should not be buying bananas if they buy nothing from the buyer? Well, Tesco and Asda would say definitely not. Our customers demand bananas. Tesco doesn't care if they buy any cars. So that tit for tat is not a business arrangement. Tesco doesn't worry about that side of the equation. Well, nor is it financial. Tesco doesn't care how much trade each side does as long as it gets enough bananas to satisfy customer demand. It's a purely political equation about tariffs. The government asks, should we be buying bananas from this particular grower? If it decides we shouldn't, then it can and does step in to try to prevent that trade. Or that could be, I don't know, abandon any trade with that country altogether, or it could be by imposing tariffs. We will let you buy, but you are going to pay a lot more, so you might be better looking elsewhere. Well, in the motor industry, tariffs are used to protect local jobs. We do not want the Japanese building their cars in Japan using Japanese labour and simply shipping the finished cars to Europe. Especially not if they can make them cheaper and can sell them here cheaper. That is just a job killer. So tariffs can be used to stop or slow down Japan from exporting cheap cars to the UK and Europe. This often leaves the best option for Japan is to set up some manufacturing in Europe, in this case the UK, and employing UK labour. But the deciding factor here is that Japan has a limited population, about 120 odd million. They can only buy so many cars, which means that if Japan has collaborations with Spain, France, Germany, America, Canada, Mexico and so on, and those populations really like Japanese cars and buy millions and millions of them, Japan cannot physically buy that same number back again. And this is the system that the world has worked with for decades, centuries, probably millennia. Buy what you want from where you want, use tariffs to protect local jobs and encourage collaborations. Realise that some countries make better products than us and accept that some countries can and will never buy very much from us at all. Until Trump. Like an infant, he seemed to be totally misunderstanding how tariffs worked and decided two features in his trade policy. First, all jobs that could possibly be done in the US must now and in the future be done in the US, starting immediately. Second, if anyone anywhere in the world exports their products to the US, they must buy an identical value of the same or some other stuff from the US. And the first victim of this childish stupidity is that the entire US motor industry, petrol, diesel and EVs, needs silicon chips. And some of them were and are only available from specialist chip factories abroad: China, Japan, Malaysia, South Korea. The US simply does not have those factories, and they are very specialist factories. They're built to be cleaner than the very best hospital operating theatres, because making a sheet containing thousands of individual chips is really expensive and time consuming, and literally one speck of dust can destroy the entire batch. Well, to build a new one in the US presents a problem because nobody actually has the expertise anymore to design and build one other than the current manufacturers. And if they did, it would still take 5, maybe 10 years to bring it into full production. So when Trump immediately slapped tariffs onto those chip makers, and they in turn either slapped tariffs right back, or, as has happened, they just said, fine, we got big enough markets elsewhere, we're just going to stop selling them to you. You can't have them. The auto industry, which Trump firmly believed he was helping, and I think he probably still does believe that even now, was absolutely crippled. And it looks like many of them may shut down their factories next month unless something really dramatic changes. Fortunately, the UK didn't go down that route. Wisely, they kept existing world standard tariffs of around 10% on all products, and they didn't single out China for any reason. It may have something to do with the fact that we have so many Chinese EV manufacturers, factories, assembly plants here, that we'd be shutting down our own factories and shedding thousands of our own existing jobs if they did retaliate. Well, Europe went down that route, the tariff route initially, but recently has backed down almost completely, seeing the likely final outcome. They're now looking at minimum price guarantees, and these are actually totally different. You just set the minimum price for, say, a small budget car at slightly more or a bit more than your own cars made locally. And you protect some of your jobs to a certain extent, but without stopping your population being able to buy the budget cars at budget prices. It means the best value cars on sale will still be locally made. Well, they should be, because if they're not, people will still spend that bit more to get a better product, and that might come from Japan or China. These have the ability to do exactly what everybody wants. You see, the politicians can protect a certain number of local jobs, the population can buy their budget cars at reasonable prices from wherever they want, and the Chinese manufacturer gets a higher price than they were proposing to sell at in the first place. Minimum pricing seems to favour all and puts no limits on each, meeting a totally artificial level to ensure trade balances are equal. Europeans would get access to be able to buy far more cars of any fuel and have far greater choice. It is a workable tariff replacement, but there's more needed. See, that includes the centuries-old collaborations, like we all did with the Japanese car makers over 50 years ago, where both sides gained and profited to varying degrees. New collaborations today can work the same way, and this approach has a much higher chance of success because both parties get something they want. Massive tariffs imposed by the US on everyone to drive manufacturing and jobs back to the States for American employees only cannot work, as they favour only one partner in the whole world, namely the US, and not even the whole US. Because even the American people, the buyers, they're going to suffer because they cannot buy these budget cars from China, and they're really good cars. They will have to buy one of those made in America that uses no products or technology from anywhere else in the world. In other words, it's going to be amazingly dear and almost certainly lower technology. How's that fair? Many viewers do not understand about robotaxis, claiming they cannot ever work, will never be as good as human drivers, etc., etc. But they have been working in America and China for some considerable time. Waymo set up in 2009, 16 years ago. And they've had various cars on the road ever since. In 2014, they got a license to operate driverless cars. In 2015, they put their first driverless car on the road. Now, at first, they needed a safety driver to be sitting in the car, just in case ready to take over if it went wrong, and occasionally it did. They also monitored remotely every single inch driven by every car from a central control room, which operated a bit like a massive remote-controlled car. They could just take over and drive any of their cars into safety or out of danger. And this phase continued until about late 2019, early 2020, when Waymo finally declared the driverless cars to then be safer than humans and no longer needed a safety driver. That was approved. Today, Waymo has been operating completely driverless cars for more than 5 years. And the slogan says as much. Waymo, the world's most experienced driver. Yeah. Well, they go on to say, we're on a mission to be the world's most trusted driver, making it safer, more accessible and more sustainable to get around without the need for anyone in the driver's seat. Now, there are countless videos here on YouTube showing them working. They exist, they work. They're safer than many human drivers, not infallible, just better and safer. They don't get tired or distracted or miss signs and speed limits or accelerate suddenly to try and beat the red light ahead. They have not held a total monopoly. They have people like Amazon Zoox, Pony.ai and WeRide, several others, but many have yet to launch their first driverless test car, and some never will. They simply supply finished systems, components for others to incorporate into their own cars. Waymo are way ahead in already in having about 1,500 driverless cars on the road in 4 cities in America. That's soon to be 6 cities, by the way. But others are working on driverless cars, and the first to break ranks and launch their own and become a serious threat is Tesla. Yeah, Elon, he's been promising this would happen from 2008, selling full self-driving software as a dream. Then 2017, it was a firm target, then just about every year since. But the important fact here is that they now have 10 to 20 driverless EVs on the roads in America, in Texas, taking paying passengers. Now, before viewers jump down my throat, Waymo in their early days, they had safety drivers sitting in their driver's seat, ready to take over in their cars for more than 4 years. Tesla today has a safety supervisor, not a driver, because they sit in the passenger seat and therefore cannot take over and drive the car to safety. Waymo limited passengers to employees only for an extended period of time to iron out the wrinkles. Tesla has limited passengers to carefully chosen individuals, mainly those with extensive YouTube and X presence, but definitely not employees only and definitely not yes men for the media. These safety supervisors are stated as being able to monitor and intervene in passenger autonomous vehicle interface. In other words, their primary function is not to drive, nor check up, nor take over from the computer. Like Waymo, it is much more to try and find out everything that can go wrong with the human interface. What happens if someone other than the ride-hailer gets into the car? What happens if they need to stop for any reason? What happens if they decide to change the destination mid-ride, etc., etc.? The 1,000,001 things that could happen, nobody ever thinks of till it happens. Cars also operate on a totally different technology. Waymo surveys the entire operating areas with radar, LiDAR, ultrasonics cameras, GPS, multitude of other sensors. The cars are also fitted with exactly the same sensors, so they are programmed to follow set routes and follow set rules, while also adopting to unexpected things happening. It's a bit like unexpected item in the baggage area. Or people cross the road without looking, umbrellas get blown into the road, workers constantly dig holes in the road. Now the computer on the cars is pre-programmed with all these possibilities and has a pre-programmed solution for each. And it does a pretty neat job. In the last 5 years, it's proven to be safer and cheaper. Oh, by the way, from a cost point of view, you don't need to tip a robot car. But the entire system is limited by this pre-mapping of accepted routes. While they are obviously the most popular routes normally taken by taxi passengers, they are limited to only those routes. You cannot, for example, get off at a flight to an airport, get out, get in one of these Waymos and ask it to drive you to your mother's house 4 miles away. If the mother's house has not been pre-mapped, it cannot go there, it physically can't drive there. Well, the Tesla system's totally different. It has absolutely nothing pre-mapped. It can go absolutely anywhere any other driver can go. It can take you to your mother's house, even if that was 50 miles away in another town or village that neither of you or the robotaxi, has ever been to. It does this by learning how to drive rather than being pre-programmed with what to do in every conceivable circumstance in a very limited number of locations. Now, it learns exactly the same way that you and I learned just about everything in life, including when we learned to drive. It watches somebody doing it for real. See, we use 2 eyes and a computer, call it a brain. As a child, you would, on many occasions, have sat in the back seat of your parents' car on countless hundreds or thousands of occasions and watched what the driver did, usually dad or your mum. It looked at what you did when you saw a street sign, traffic lights, speed, junctions, dogs running into the road, floods ahead, parking, paying tolls, filling up with fuel. You, as a child, before you could even, way before you get your license, you've seen it all. You know it all. Now, every single Tesla ever made is equipped with cameras and control centres, and every inch of every journey is monitored and recorded. Always have done. The computer on a robotaxi then just spends its entire life just watching those videos, learning what to do. And they cover billions of miles driven by a fantastic variety of drivers of all ages on all continents, meeting about 99.999% of all the things you could possibly ever come across as a driver. And they watch what the human does in each situation. Now, this is all done at the speed of light. If you want to find proof of this, just type into Google search engine any topic you like, something really weird. I use slugs as pets. I typed it in, hit enter, I got 4,250,000 items in 0.17 seconds. In comparison, the human brain generally responds to a visual stimulus in about 1/4 of a second, so it's slower. So for each and every situation a self-driving car meets, the computer can analyse it, decide the course of action quicker than a human. And it never gets distracted, never forgets to look when overtaking, never underestimates the speed of an oncoming car, and never has to look away from the road to look at a passenger, map, smartphone, or even a rear-view mirror while driving. Well, just like Waymo, this system is now on the roads in a finished form, but now needs to iron out the wrinkles specifically related to passenger car interface. And this all happens at the speed of light for the computer, but learning how passengers react is a new area to learn about. That will take some time. But the really interesting thing is that while Waymo had safety drivers in their cars ready to take over, the Tesla robotaxi does not. It has gone straight to the passenger interface stage. All the Tesla safety supervisor can do is hit one of 3 big red buttons in front of him. The first one connects them to a control center where all drives are being monitored. They can talk to someone, ask for advice. The second red button is marked pull over. In a non-life or harm-threatening situation, pressing that will just ask the car to pull safely to a stop in a suitable location. It's not him driving it or her. The third button is marked all stop and supposedly just stops the vehicle in the quickest possible time. In none of the cases can they take over the vehicles themselves. Thus, the self-driving bit of the robotaxi appears to be pretty much fully developed already and well ahead of where Waymo was at this point in their venture. Time's going to tell. Xpeng. Some manufacturers are taking their EV development more seriously than others, and the serious ones seem to be mainly from China. Over there, they have a much more pro-environment, pro-renewable energy and pro-automation approach, right from the top government right down to the lowliest peasant. AI, EVs, AVs, they're all out there. They're just the future, and in China, it's just already arrived. Over here, especially in the US, resistance to the future is often fierce. Sometimes brutal and illegal. Is a strange attitude, since most of those opposing this future are perfectly happy to ditch their desktop computers and embrace smartphones and tablets. Indeed, they often use this technology to organise the resistance and actions or rallies to protest the EV future, which essentially is just a big computer mounted on wheels. Well, Xpeng is one such company, and they're carving out a niche of their own. Instead of following the mainstream, having batteries that plug into chargers, they simply swap batteries. A flat one for a fully charged one. And it takes as little as 3 or 4 minutes. And that's quicker than standing there with your petrol nozzle in your hand waiting for the fuel tank to fill up at a petrol station. But of course, there are not many of these about. So just in case, they can also plug in like normal, charge in the normal way. It's best of both worlds, they would claim. Well, the cars are well up there in quality, technology, comfort, performance, but now offer an interesting choice. 3 minutes to get a full battery, and you don't even need to get out of the car. It's an interesting idea, but much will depend on the availability of battery swap stations, and probably more importantly, whether or not you can charge at home. So if you can charge at home, you may never ever need to use this feature. Well, now they're targeting the UK and the EU, and we'll be getting our first share of battery swap stations, which also, by the way, also have conventional DC ultra-rapid chargers. I suspect it will appeal to some, like those who cannot get enough charge at home or cannot charge at home at all and must use public EV chargers on a regular basis. A 3-minute stop is the best in the world. For others, like those that cannot charge at home, a single stop once a week for 3 minutes is much quicker than filling up with petrol used to be, and that might be enough to get their serious attention. It also, by the way, automatically overcomes any battery worries you might have had. Every time you top up, well, effectively you get a new battery, and they obviously will never install a dud battery. Well, buyers should definitely give Xpeng EVs serious attention, as they're worthy contenders even without battery swap and priced very competitively. In other words, they're worth buying even if you plan to never ever swap your battery for a full one. Okay, checking out our viewer comments. We've got a lively bunch as always. Now, can I make a request? I get so many comments from those that don't want an EV, that are pages long and tell me in absolute infinite detail about how long it takes to fill a petrol tank with petrol. Can I give you a clue? We know, right? I was probably doing it before you were even born. I've probably done more miles as a company rep than you have ever driven in your entire life. I know all these things. You don't need to tell me. Stop wasting your time and my time. But Colin Wist 609 still persists. Maybe my posted reply, it's already up there, will stop him and stop others like Ziploc 2000 from posting futile comments in future. On the good side, MRA 9085 summed it all up very nicely. Try an EV, you'll never go back. One thing you miss filling up with petrol is taking a few minutes to chat with other EV drivers who are also charging. Stop rushing around destroying your health. Slow down, be a bit sociable. Well, our video about the BEV Oasis grand opening in Manchester got a massive reaction in the comments section, and the interview with the CEO was amazingly well received. Thanks very much to all who came to meet me and stopped and chatted. We even managed to film some of them. We show here just a few of those hugely positive comments we received. Thanks very much. Well, my fantasy EV virtual portfolio is ticking along nicely. I missed some of the report last week because when I made the video, the DJI, the Dow Jones Index, was closed for Juneteenth. I can report that the last shares I virtually bought, BYD, opened ahead and they're performing very nicely. Bought them at 123.87 and they're now at 129.9. Now remember, this is a year-long project. All in all, as I prepare this video, portfolio is well up, £609 on just over an £8,000 investment. But if I can, I'll provide an even more current update before I launch the video. This video is being prepared really early as I'm in full holiday mode. Don't worry, videos will continue, but I deserve a break. I'm not going to add to the portfolio this week. It's performing rather well. It can manage a short while without me buying or selling anything new. The only shares that need watching are the Hesai Group, which makes LiDAR sensors for the EV industry. Well, they, like many other suppliers, are suffering from reduced sales overall and reduced investments in full self-driving. I'm happy to leave these there for now. They still have potential, even with the launch of the Tesla Robotaxi. The marketplace is plenty big enough for an awful lot of players for a good few years yet. And the Robotaxi is likely to spur on other manufacturers who still believe LiDAR is the long-term future in driver assist features and full self-drive, in which case the shares will bounce back up again. We will see. Thanks very much for watching. I'm Dave.